Some people walk through life carrying a weight they cannot name, a quiet ache woven into their every step, as if their hearts were stitched to the wounds of others. They are the empaths, those who feel the world's pain as their own, their souls like porous vessels, absorbing the unspoken cries of the collective unconscious. Yet for all their depth, they often find themselves tethered to a shadow, a narcissist whose insatiable hunger for validation casts a long, cold silhouette over the empath's light. This is the story of their quiet revolution, the moment they cease pouring their essence into a vessel that cannot hold it, the day they reclaim their own sacred boundaries. Imagine an empath, her heart, a kaleidoscope of compassion, standing at the edge of a vast inner landscape. She has spent years tending to the narcissist's wounds, believing her love could mend the unhealable, that her light could pierce the darkness of their fractured ego. She sees in them a mirror of her own shadow, a reflection of her deepest fear, that she is not enough unless she saves another. This is no mere relationship. It is a dance of archetypes, the wounded healer entwined with the eternal child, each projecting their unclaimed selves onto the other. The narcissist, with their grandiose mask, seeks the empath's adoration to fill a void they cannot name, while the empath, driven by a primal need to nurture, sacrifices her own vitality on the altar of their need. In the Jungian lens, this dynamic is a collision of the self and the shadow. The empath, in her quest for wholeness, projects her unintegrated strength onto the narcissist, believing they hold the key to her completion. She sees their potential, their buried light, and pours herself into excavating it, unaware that this is her own light, reflected back, distorted by their mirrored gaze. The narcissist, meanwhile, projects their shame, their fear of insignificance onto the empath, demanding she carry it for them. This is the alchemy of projection, where the unclaimed parts of the psyche are cast outward, seeking resolution in another's soul. But the narcissist's wound is a bottomless well, and the empath's offering, no matter how generous, is swallowed without return. You watching this, have you ever felt your heart stretch, thin, stretched across someone else's pain, believing your love could rewrite their story? Have you poured your energy into someone who took without giving, leaving you to wonder where your own edges begin? This is the empath's paradox. The more they give, the less they feel whole. Yet the act of giving feels like their purpose. Attachment theory whispers here, revealing how early wounds shape this dance. The empath, often raised in environments where love was conditional, learns to earn worth through caregiving. The narcissist, shaped by neglect or grandiosity, learns to demand without reciprocity. Together they form a bond, not of love but of survival, a reenactment of old patterns played out in the theater of the present. The empath's journey, however, is not one of eternal sacrifice. Beneath her compassion lies a stirring, a quiet rebellion born in the depths of her psyche. Jung called this individuation the process of becoming whole by integrating the shadow, the ego, and the self. For the empath, this means facing the uncomfortable truth. Her need to heal the narcissist is not just love, but a projection of her own unclaimed power. She has given away her agency, believing her worth lies in fixing another. The narcissist, in turn, mirrors her fear of abandonment, her terror that without her sacrifice, she is nothing. To stop trying to heal them is to confront this shadow, to ask, who am I when I am not saving someone else? This revolution begins quietly, not with grand gestures, but with a subtle shift in the heart. She notices the exhaustion, the way her body aches from carrying another's pain. She feels the dissonance between her desire to help and the reality that her efforts change nothing. The narcissist remains unchanged, their demands unyielding, their gratitude fleeting. She begins to see the pattern, the way her giving feeds their taking, the way her light fuels their shadow. This is the moment of awakening where the empath starts to reclaim her boundaries, not out of anger, but out of a deep, aching love for herself. You sitting there, can you feel that stirring within you? That quiet voice whispering that your worth is not measured by how much you can endure, The empath's revolution is not a rejection of love, but a redefinition of it. It is the courage to say, I am enough even when I do not save you. It is the beginning of a journey inward, where the empath learns to hold her own light, to nurture her own soul, and to walk away from a dance that no longer serves her. The empath's awakening is not a single moment, but a slow unraveling, a thread pulled from the tapestry of her life, revealing the pattern beneath. She stands at the precipice of her own psyche, gazing into the abyss of her unclaimed self. For so long she has defined herself through the narcissist's gaze, believing her light only shines when it illuminates another. But now, in the quiet of her soul, she begins to hear a different voice, not the narcissist's demands, nor the echo of her own self-doubt, but the whisper of her own becoming. This is the voice of the self, the Jungian archetype of wholeness, calling her to step away from the dance of projection and into the work of individuation. The narcissist, with their polished mask of charm and need, has been a mirror, but not a kind one. They reflect back to the empath her deepest wounds, her fear of being unseen, her belief that love must be earned through sacrifice. In their dynamic, the empath has played the role of the savior, pouring her energy into their void, hoping to fill it with her compassion. Yet the narcissist's void is a shadow of their own, making a refusal to face their own shame, their own fragility. The empath, in her longing to heal, has been complicit in this illusion, believing her love could bridge the unbridgeable. But now she sees the truth. The narcissist's wound is not hers to heal. To believe otherwise is to deny her own sovereignty. This realization is both a liberation and a grief. To step away from the narcissist is to mourn the fantasy of who they could be, the potential she saw in them, the dream she held so tightly. It is to acknowledge that her love, no matter how vast, cannot rewrite another's story. This grief is a sacred passage, a descent into the shadow where the empath confronts her own illusions. Jung taught that the shadow holds not only our darkness, but our untapped strength, and for the empath, this strength lies in her ability to choose herself. To stop trying to heal the narcissist is to reclaim the energy she has poured outward, to redirect it toward her own growth, her own integration. You sitting there, can you feel the weight of that choice? The way it tugs at your heart, both terrifying and exhilarating. To walk away is not to abandon love, but to redefine it, to say, I will no longer diminish myself to feed another's ego. This is the empath's quiet revolution, a rebellion not against the narcissist, but against the part of herself that believed she was only worthy when saving another. It is a turning inward, a journey toward the self, where she begins to ask, what does it mean to love myself as fiercely as I have loved another? Attachment theory offers a lens here, illuminating the roots of this dynamic. The empath, often shaped by anxious or disorganized attachment, has learned to seek safety in giving, to find worth in being needed. The narcissist, with their avoidant or grandiose tendencies, exploits this, offering just enough validation to keep the empath tethered. But as the empath awakens, she begins to see this pattern for what it is, a reenactment of old wounds, a cycle that keeps her small. To break this cycle is to step into secure attachment, not just with others, but with herself. It is to learn that her worth is not contingent on another's approval, that her light shines brightest when it is not dimmed by another's shadow. This journey is not without pain. The empath may feel the pull of guilt, the fear that by setting boundaries, she is betraying her own compassion. The narcissist, sensing the shift, may double down, wielding charm or manipulation to pull her back. But the empath's revolution is not about hardening her heart. It is about softening it toward herself. She begins to set boundaries not as walls, but as sacred thresholds, declarations of her own worth. She learns to say, I will love you, but I will not lose myself in you. This is the work of individuation, the slow, deliberate integration of her fragmented selves, the caregiver, the wounded child, the seeker of wholeness. As she steps back, the empath begins to see the narcissist not as a villain, but as a mirror of her own unhealed parts. They are not her enemy, but her teacher, showing her where she has given away her power. This is the paradox of the shadow. It wounds us, but it also points us toward healing. By releasing the need to heal the narcissist, the empath frees herself to heal her own wounds, to reclaim the parts of herself she has projected outward. She begins to weave a new story, one where her compassion is a gift she gives freely, not a debt she owes. The empath's journey inward is a descent into the uncharted waters of her own psyche, where the currents of compassion and self-betrayal swirl in a delicate dance. She has begun to loosen her grip on the narcissist's narrative, to step back from the role of healer in a story that was never hers to write. Yet this is not a clean break, not a moment of triumph where she walks away unscathed. The revolution is quiet, messy, and deeply human, marked by moments of doubt and the lingering echo of the narcissist's voice in her mind. She wonders if she is selfish, if her withdrawal is a failure of love. But in these questions lies the seed of her transformation, the slow awakening to a truth Jung might call the individuation of the soul. Her worth is not tethered to another's healing. The narcissist, in their relentless need, has been a catalyst, a shadow figure pulling the empath toward her own unclaimed strength. In the Jungian frame, the narcissist embodies the trickster archetype, charming, manipulative, and ultimately elusive, forcing the empath to confront her own illusions. She has seen in them a reflection of her own longing for wholeness, projecting onto them the potential for redemption she seeks within herself. But as she steps back, she begins to see this projection for what it is, a mirage born of her own unintegrated shadow. The narcissist's grandiosity, their refusal to meet her halfway, mirrors her own fear of claiming her power, of standing fully in her own light. This realization is both a wound and a gift. To stop trying to heal the narcissist is to face the pain of her own unmet needs, the parts of her that have been silenced in the service of another. It is to acknowledge the child within her, the one who learned to give, to be seen, to love, to be loved. Attachment theory illuminates this wound, showing how the empath's early experiences shaped her belief that love is a transaction, a sacrifice offered to earn belonging. The narcissist, with their insatiable hunger, exploits this wound, feeding on her giving while offering only crumbs in return. But as the empath begins to see this pattern, she also begins to see herself not as a savior, but as a soul deserving of her own care. You watching this, can you feel the ache of that recognition? The moment when you see that your giving has been a plea for worth, a silent bargain with the world. The empath's revolution is not about closing her heart, but about opening it to herself. It is about learning to hold her own pain with the same tenderness she has offered others. This is the work of shadow integration, where she faces the parts of herself she has denied, the anger, the fear, the longing for reciprocity. These are not weaknesses, but signposts, guiding her toward a deeper understanding of her own boundaries. As she moves through this process, the empath begins to redefine love. It is no longer a one-way outpouring, a desperate attempt to fill another's void. Instead, it becomes a mutual exchange, a dance of equals where her light is honored, not consumed. She learns to set boundaries not as punishment, but as acts of self-respect, declarations that her energy is sacred, her heart a temple not to be entered lightly. This is the moment where the empath begins to embody the wise woman archetype, the one who knows her worth and offers her compassion from a place of strength, not sacrifice. The narcissist, sensing this shift, may resist their manipulations, growing sharper as they feel her light withdrawing. But the empath, now anchored in her own truth, begins to see these tactics for what they are, not a reflection of her failure, but of their own unhealed wounds. She does not hate them, nor does she wish them harm. Instead, she releases them to their own journey, understanding that their healing is not her responsibility. This is the essence of her revolution, a quiet, steadfast refusal to carry what is not hers, a turning toward her own soul's calling. In this turning, she discovers a new kind of freedom. The collective unconscious, that vast reservoir of human experience, whispers to her of others who have walked this path of empaths, who have learned to hold their light without apology. She is not alone in her struggle, nor in her triumph. Her journey is a thread in the larger tapestry of human becoming, a testament to the courage it takes to choose oneself. As she steps into this new chapter, she begins to weave a life where her compassion is a gift, not a debt, where her love flows from abundance, not obligation. The empath's revolution unfolds like a river carving a new path through ancient stone, steady, yet relentless in its quiet power. She has begun to see the narcissist not as her purpose, but as a mirror reflecting back the parts of herself she has yet to claim. This is no small reckoning. To step away from the role of healer is to unravel the threads of identity she has woven around sacrifice to confront the raw, tender truth of her own worth. In the Jungian dance of archetypes, she is no longer the wounded healer pouring herself into another's void, but a seeker of her own wholeness stepping into the light of her own self. This is the heart of individuation, the slow, sacred work of becoming whole by embracing all that she is: light and shadow, strength and vulnerability. The narcissist, with their polished mask and unyielding hunger, has been a teacher in disguise, a catalyst for the empath's awakening. Their refusal to meet her in mutual vulnerability has forced her to face her own patterns of overgiving, her belief that love must be earned through self-erasure. In the collective unconscious, this dynamic echoes through time, a story as old as humanity itself: the giver and the taker, the light and the shadow, locked in a dance that promises salvation but delivers only exhaustion. The empath, in her longing to heal, has been chasing a shadow projection, believing the narcissist's potential was her own redemption. But now she sees the truth. Her redemption lies not in fixing another, but in claiming herself. This claiming is not a loud declaration, but a quiet internal shift, a softening toward her own needs. She begins to notice the small moments: how her body tenses when the narcissist demands, how her heart aches when her efforts go unseen. These are not signs of failure, but signals from her deeper self urging her to listen. Attachment theory offers clarity here, revealing how her early experiences taught her to prioritize others' needs over her own, to seek safety in being indispensable. The narcissist, with their endless need, became the perfect stage for this old wound to play out. But as she awakens, she begins to rewrite this script, choosing to nurture herself with the same fierce devotion she once gave away. You sitting there, can you feel that shift stirring within you? That moment when you realize the love you've poured into another could be turned inward, could water the parched soil of your own soul. The empath's revolution is not about abandoning compassion, but about redirecting it, about recognizing that her heart is not a well to be drained, but a garden to be tended. This is the work of shadow integration, where she faces the parts of herself she has buried: the anger at being unseen, the grief of unreciprocated love, the fear that she is only valuable when needed. These are not burdens, but keys unlocking the door to her own power. As she steps into this power, the empath begins to redefine her boundaries. They are no longer walls to keep others out, but thresholds, sacred lines that honor her own energy. She learns to say no, not with malice, but with clarity, understanding that every no to the narcissist is a yes to herself. This is the emergence of the sovereign archetype, the one who knows her worth and offers her gifts from a place of abundance, not obligation. The narcissist, sensing this shift, may lash out or withdraw their manipulations, a desperate attempt to pull her back into their orbit. But the empath, now grounded in her own truth, sees these tactics as reflections of their own pain, not her inadequacy. This seeing is a profound act of compassion, not the self-sacrificing kind, but a compassion rooted in clarity. She does not need to hate the narcissist or cast them as the villain. Instead, she releases them to their own journey, understanding that their wounds are not her responsibility. This release is a liberation, a shedding of the weight she has carried for too long. In the Jungian frame, it is a reclaiming of her projections, a recognition that the light she saw in the narcissist was her own, distorted by their mirrored gaze. By stepping away, she begins to hold that light for herself, to nurture her own growth, her own becoming. The collective unconscious hums with the stories of others who have walked this path, empaths who have learned to love without losing themselves. She is part of this lineage, a thread in the tapestry of human awakening. Her revolution is not just personal, but universal, a testament to the courage it takes to choose oneself in a world that often demands sacrifice. As she moves forward, she carries a new kind of love, one that flows freely not from a need to prove her worth, but from the quiet certainty that she is enough. The empath's revolution deepens a quiet tide, reshaping the contours of her inner world. She has begun to untangle herself from the narcissist's orbit, not with anger or rejection, but with a steady, almost sacred resolve to honor her own soul. This is no simple act of withdrawal. It is a reclamation, a turning toward the parts of herself she has long neglected. In the Jungian tapestry, she is weaving together the threads of her fragmented self, the caregiver who gave too much, the wounded child who sought love through sacrifice, the seeker who yearned for wholeness in another's eyes. This is the work of individuation, the slow alchemy of becoming whole, where the empath learns to hold her own light without apology. The narcissist, with their insatiable need and polished charm, has been a shadow mirror reflecting back the empath's unclaimed power. For so long, she believed her role was to heal them, to pour her compassion into their void until it overflowed with light. But now she sees the futility of this dance. The way her giving only fed their taking, her light only deepened their shadow. This seeing is a painful awakening, a confrontation with the illusion that her love could change another's heart. In the collective unconscious, this story echoes across generations. Empaths who have poured themselves into others only to find their own wells running dry. Yet in this pain lies the seed of transformation, the moment where she begins to choose herself. This choice is not a rejection of love, but a redefinition of it. The empath begins to understand that true compassion does not demand self-erasure. It flows from a place of fullness, not depletion. She starts to tend to her own wounds, to listen to the quiet cries of her own heart. Attachment theory sheds light here, revealing how her early experiences shaped her belief that love is a transaction, a sacrifice offered to earn belonging. The narcissist, with their endless demands, became the perfect stage for this old pattern to play out, their validation, a fleeting reward for her giving. But as she steps back, she begins to rewrite this narrative, learning to offer herself the love she once sought from others. You watching this, can you feel the weight of that shift? The moment when you realize your heart is not a currency to be spent, but a sacred space to be cherished. The empath's revolution is a quiet rebellion against the belief that her worth lies in how much she can give. It is a turning inward, where she begins to nurture her own soul with the same tenderness she once offered the narcissist. This is the work of shadow integration, where she faces the parts of herself she has hidden, the anger at being unseen, the grief of unreturned love, the fear that she is only valuable when needed. These are not flaws, but portals leading her toward a deeper understanding of her own strength. As she moves through this process, the empath begins to embody a new archetype, the healer not for others, but for herself. She learns to set boundaries that are not walls, but bridges, connecting her to her own truth. These boundaries are acts of love, declarations that her energy is precious, her heart a sanctuary, not to be entered without reverence. The narcissist, sensing this shift, may try to pull her back, their manipulations, a desperate attempt to reclaim her light. But the empath, now rooted in her own sovereignty, sees these tactics for what they are, not a reflection of her worth, but a mirror of their own unhealed wounds. This clarity allows her to release the narcissist with compassion, not resentment. She does not need to vilify them or cling to the fantasy of their potential. Instead, she lets them go, understanding that their journey is their own, just as hers belongs to her. This release is a profound act of liberation, a shedding of the projections that once bound her. In the Jungian frame, it is a reclaiming of her own light, a recognition that the love she sought in the narcissist was always within her, waiting to be claimed. By stepping away, she begins to weave a new story, one where her compassion is a gift, not a debt, where her love flows from abundance, not obligation. The collective unconscious hums with the resonance of this journey, connecting her to countless others who have walked the path of self-reclamation. She is not alone in her struggle nor in her triumph. Her revolution is a thread in the larger tapestry of human awakening, a testament to the courage it takes to choose oneself in a world that often demands sacrifice. As she steps into this new chapter, she carries a quiet certainty, a knowing that her worth is not contingent on another's healing. She is enough not because of what she gives, but because of who she is. The empath's revolution has become a quiet symphony, each note a step toward her own wholeness. She has released the narcissist from the role of her redeemer, seeing now that the light she sought in them was her own, refracted through the distorted mirror of their need. This is the heart of her transformation, the moment where she turns inward, not to escape the world, but to anchor herself within it. In the Jungian dance of archetypes, she is no longer the martyr or the savior, but the alchemist transmuting the pain of her past into the gold of self-awareness. This is individuation at its core, the integration of shadow and light, the weaving of a self that is whole, not fragmented by the demands of another. The narcissist, once the center of her orbit, now fades into the periphery, a shadow figure whose role in her story is complete. She sees them with new eyes, not as the villain or the victim, but as a human soul caught in their own unhealed wounds, their grandiosity, a fragile mask for their shame. This seeing is a profound act of compassion, not the self-sacrificing kind that once drained her, but a compassion born of clarity. She understands that their healing is not her burden, that her love, no matter how vast, cannot fill a void they refuse to face. In releasing them, she frees herself from the illusion that her worth lies in fixing another, stepping into a new narrative where her energy is hers to nurture. This shift is a reclamation of power, a quiet yet seismic act of self-love. The empath begins to tend to her own inner landscape, to water the parts of herself she has neglected in her quest to heal others. Attachment theory offers insight here, illuminating how her early wounds taught her to seek safety in giving, to measure her worth by how much she could endure. The narcissist, with their endless hunger, became a stage for this old pattern, their fleeting validation a substitute for the love she craved. But now she begins to offer that love to herself, to cradle her own heart with the tenderness she once poured outward. This is the work of secure attachment, not just with others, but with her own soul. You sitting there, can you feel the freedom in that choice? The way it loosens the knots of obligation, the way it opens a space for your own becoming. The empath's revolution is not a rejection of her compassion, but a redirection of it, a recognition that her heart is not a well to be drained, but a flame to be kindled. This is shadow work at its deepest, where she faces the parts of herself she has buried, the resentment of being unseen, the sorrow of unreciprocated love, the fear that she is only valuable when needed. These are not weights, but wings lifting her toward a fuller expression of herself. As she moves through this process, the empath begins to embody the archetype of the mystic, the one who sees beyond the surface of things, who knows that true love begins within. Her boundaries become sacred thresholds, not barriers, honoring her energy as a finite and precious resource. She learns to offer her compassion selectively, not out of scarcity, but out of discernment, giving only where it is received with mutual respect. The narcissist, once the recipient of her boundless giving, now stands outside this circle, their manipulations no longer able to pierce her clarity. She does not hate them, nor does she wish them ill. She simply lets them go, trusting that their path is their own, just as hers is hers. This letting go is a liberation, a shedding of the projections that once bound her to the narcissist's story. In the Jungian frame, it is a reclaiming of her own myth, a recognition that the love she sought in them was always within her, waiting to be claimed. She begins to weave a new tapestry, one where her compassion is a gift freely given, not a debt owed to the world. The collective unconscious resonates with this journey, connecting her to countless others who have walked the path of self-reclamation, empaths who have learned to hold their light without apology. Her revolution is both personal and universal, a quiet act of defiance against a world that often demands women in particular to give, until they break. She is a living testament to the power of choosing oneself, of loving from a place of wholeness rather than lack. As she steps into this new chapter, she carries a quiet radiance, a knowing that her worth is not contingent on another's healing, that her love is most powerful when it begins with herself. The individual who truly understands their depths extends that grace to the world,